My beloved child, pause here for a moment, because what you are about to hear was not placed before you by accident. Something has been unfolding quietly behind your back, something your heart may have sensed without fully understanding. The person who has been occupying your thoughts, the one whose energy seems to reach you even in silence, recently carried your photograph into a room filled with questions. They did not go there because they had stopped caring. They went because their feelings had become too powerful to explain, too persistent to ignore, and too mysterious to trust without searching for an answer. Do not move away from this message yet. There is a detail about that meeting that changed the way they see you forever, and it was not what they expected to hear. For days, perhaps even weeks, your person had been trying to convince themselves that what they felt for you was temporary. They told themselves it was simple curiosity, a passing attraction, or the result of thinking too deeply about someone who had left an impression on them. Yet every time they attempted to pull their attention away, something brought it back. A familiar song. A quiet hour at night. A name spoken by someone else. A dream that felt more like a memory than an imagination. Even ordinary moments began carrying reminders of you. They could not understand why your presence remained with them when you were not physically near. And that is where this hidden story truly begins. One evening, your person sat alone with your photograph in their hand. The room around them was quiet, but their thoughts were not. They studied your expression as though searching for an answer hidden behind your eyes. There was something in your face they had never been able to forget. Not perfection. Not appearance alone. It was something deeper. Something that made them feel seen even when you had said very little. They whispered a question they would have been too embarrassed to ask anyone else. Why does this person feel so familiar to me? That question remained in the room long after their voice faded. My child, understand this. They were not looking at your photograph casually. They were remembering moments they had pretended did not matter. The way your energy shifted the atmosphere. The way a simple interaction stayed in their mind longer than it should have. The way they sometimes felt calm when thinking of you, yet strangely restless when attempting to forget you. They wanted logic, but their heart kept offering mystery. Someone close to them had noticed the change. This person saw how distracted they became whenever your name appeared. They saw the way your person would begin to speak about you, then suddenly stop, as though revealing too much might expose something they were not ready to admit. At first, they laughed it off. Then they offered advice. But eventually, they said something that planted a seed. You need to understand why this connection is affecting you so deeply. Your person resisted the idea. They did not want to appear foolish. They did not want anyone to tell them what to feel. Most of all, they feared hearing an answer that would force them to make a decision. But curiosity grew stronger than resistance. The following day, they placed your photograph somewhere private. They told no one what they were planning. They moved through their routine pretending everything was normal, yet beneath the surface they were carrying one thought: what if there is a reason I cannot let this person go? Stay with me, because what happened next was not merely a conversation. It became a mirror your person could no longer turn away from. The room they entered was simple. It was quieter than they expected. There were no dramatic signs, no frightening atmosphere, nothing that matched the stories people sometimes imagine. There was only a table, 2 chairs, soft light, and a stranger whose attention seemed unusually still. Your person almost left before the meeting began. They suddenly felt exposed. The photograph in their hand seemed heavier than paper. It felt like evidence of feelings they had not confessed. For one brief moment, they considered placing it back into their pocket and pretending they had come for another reason. But something inside them said, "Stay." They sat down. The psychic did not immediately ask questions. Instead, they looked at your person carefully and said, "You did not come here because you are uncertain about this person. You came because you are frightened by how certain your heart feels." Those words entered your person like a key turning inside a locked door. They tried to smile. They attempted to remain composed. But their fingers tightened around your photograph. The psychic then asked them to place the image on the table. Your person hesitated. It was only a photograph, yet placing it down felt strangely intimate, as though they were introducing you to someone while you were not there. Their eyes remained fixed on your face as they slowly slid the picture forward. The moment the psychic looked at it, their expression changed. Not with fear. Not with alarm. With recognition. And that was the first moment your person's heartbeat changed. The psychic remained silent longer than expected. That silence created 100 questions in your person's mind. They wondered whether something negative had been sensed. They wondered whether this connection was only one-sided. They wondered whether they had imagined every meaningful glance, every unspoken feeling, every moment that seemed charged with something neither of you dared to name. Then the psychic looked up and said, "This person has carried more than you know." Your person's defenses weakened. They had expected to hear something about attraction, romance, or compatibility. Instead, the first revelation was about your hidden strength. The psychic said your photograph held the energy of someone who had learned to smile while privately carrying disappointment. Someone who had been misunderstood because they did not always explain their pain. Someone who had offered loyalty in places where loyalty was not returned with equal care. Your person stopped breathing for a moment. They knew pieces of your story, but not all of it. They had sensed there was a depth within you that you rarely revealed. Yet hearing a stranger describe the quiet weight behind your expression made them see your face differently. They looked back at your photograph. For the first time, they were not only seeing the person they desired. They were seeing the battles you had survived without announcing them. And that was only the beginning. Do not skip this next part, because the second revelation touched the exact place your person had been trying to protect. The psychic said, "You have been judging this person's silence without understanding what it costs them to speak." Your person became still. There had been moments when they believed you were distant. Moments when they interpreted your caution as disinterest. Moments when they wondered why you did not simply say more, show more, or make everything clear. But now another possibility entered their heart. What if your silence was not rejection? What if it was protection? What if you had learned that revealing too much too quickly could lead to being misunderstood, dismissed, or taken for granted? The psychic did not tell them that you were cold. They told them you were careful. That single difference began rearranging everything your person believed about you. They remembered a moment when you almost opened up but changed the subject. They remembered the way your eyes seemed to carry a sentence your mouth never completed. They remembered how you sometimes appeared ready to step closer, only to retreat behind composure. Until that meeting, your person had thought you were sending mixed signals. Now they wondered whether you had been waiting for emotional safety. My child, something softened inside them then. The frustration they had carried began turning into compassion. The questions that once sounded like accusations became quieter, gentler questions. What happened to them? Who made them believe they had to hide what they feel? Have I been expecting openness without giving them enough reassurance? The psychic watched your person closely and said, "You are beginning to understand." But your person did not yet understand the greatest part. The photograph remained on the table between them. The room seemed to grow quieter, as though even the air was waiting. Your person leaned forward, no longer skeptical, no longer pretending this meeting was merely curiosity. They asked, "Do they feel anything for me?" The question escaped more honestly than they intended. The psychic did not answer immediately. Instead, they asked, "Why are you afraid they do?" That question confused your person. They had expected reassurance or disappointment, not a question turned back toward them. They tried to explain that they were not afraid. They said they simply wanted clarity. But the psychic shook their head slowly. "You are not afraid that they feel nothing," they said. "You are afraid that they feel something real, because then you would have to stop hiding behind uncertainty." My child, those words reached a truth your person had concealed even from themselves. It was easier for them to believe you were unavailable, uninterested, or impossible to understand. That belief allowed them to remain safe. It gave them permission to delay, to observe from a distance, to keep their feelings hidden beneath hesitation. But if you felt the connection too, then their excuses would begin disappearing. They would have to decide whether they were brave enough to approach what their heart had already recognized. The psychic touched the edge of your photograph and said, "This person does not need to be convinced of your value. They need to know whether your intentions are safe." That sentence changed something permanent. Your person had spent so much time wondering whether they were good enough for you that they had never asked whether they had made you feel secure enough to trust them. They had been waiting for a sign from you. Yet perhaps you had been waiting for consistency from them. They had been looking for certainty in your behavior. Yet perhaps you had been looking for courage in theirs. And suddenly, the entire connection appeared reversed. Stay until the end of this message, because the next thing the psychic revealed made your person question every delay, every unfinished conversation, and every moment when pride had spoken louder than affection. The psychic said, "There was a moment when this person nearly gave up on the connection." Your person's face changed instantly. They asked when. The psychic could not offer a calendar date, but described the emotional moment. It was a time when you had felt unseen. A time when your heart had quietly asked whether you were imagining the connection alone. You may have appeared normal to everyone around you, but internally you had begun pulling your energy back. Your person remembered. They knew exactly which moment it might have been. There had been a shift in you. Your responses changed. Your warmth became measured. Your presence was still kind, but no longer freely available. At the time, your person had assumed you were losing interest. Now they realized you may have been protecting your dignity. The psychic said, they did not pull away because they stopped caring. They pulled away because they feared caring alone. Those words broke through something your person had been holding. They looked down at your photograph, and for the first time during the meeting, regret entered their eyes. They remembered every opportunity they had delayed. Every message they had rewritten but never sent. Every time they had chosen to appear unaffected when, in truth, your absence had unsettled them. They had believed silence made them powerful. Now they saw how silence may have made you feel forgotten. My child, heaven does not reveal this to make you chase anyone. It is being revealed because there are moments when truth begins working inside another person before you can see the evidence. Not every change announces itself immediately. Some changes happen in quiet rooms, through unexpected conversations, when the heart is finally confronted with what it has been avoiding. Your person was being confronted. But the psychic had not yet delivered the message that would change their feelings forever. They looked at your photograph again, more deeply this time. Their expression became serious. Your person noticed and asked, "What is it?" The psychic answered, "This person has a rare kind of loyalty. But once they truly close the door, they do not reopen it easily." Your person felt a sudden wave of urgency. Until then, they had treated time as though it were endless. They assumed the connection would remain available whenever they felt ready. They believed you would somehow continue understanding their hesitation, their inconsistency, and their unspoken emotions. But now they were hearing that your patience had limits. Not because you were cruel. Because you had learned self-respect. The psychic explained that your energy did not belong to someone who would beg to be chosen. You might wait longer than others. You might forgive more than people realize. You might continue caring in silence even after disappointment. But there comes a point when your spirit becomes quiet. And when that quietness arrives, it is not a strategy. It is release. Your person's fear was no longer about rejection. It was about arriving too late. That fear forced them to admit what they had been unwilling to say aloud. They did not want a future in which you became only someone they once had the chance to know. They did not want to hear that you had moved on because they had remained undecided. They did not want another person to receive the tenderness they had been too cautious to honor. The psychic watched their reaction and said, "Your feelings are not changing because of something mystical I am telling you. They are changing because you are finally seeing the consequences of pretending not to care." Your person looked away. The truth was uncomfortable, but undeniable. They had not stopped themselves because their feelings were weak. They had stopped themselves because their feelings were strong enough to threaten the life they had carefully controlled. You represented unpredictability, vulnerability, a future they could not fully calculate. And yet, you also represented something they had secretly wanted for a very long time, a connection that felt meaningful rather than convenient. My beloved child, This is where the meeting became even more personal. The psychic asked your person to close their eyes and remember the first time they felt something shift around you. They did. A specific memory returned. Perhaps it was the first time your eyes met longer than usual. Perhaps it was a conversation that felt strangely effortless. Perhaps it was a moment when you showed kindness without knowing how deeply it would affect them. Whatever the memory was, your person had never forgotten it. The psychic asked, "What did you feel?" Your person answered quietly, "Peace." Then, after a pause, they added, "And fear." That combination revealed everything. You made them feel calm because something about you felt familiar. You made them feel afraid because familiarity opened a door they had spent years keeping closed. The psychic said, "Some people enter your life and excite your ego. Others enter and awaken your soul. This person did not simply attract your attention. They awakened the part of you that still believes love can be honest." Your person's eyes returned to your photograph. They no longer saw you as an emotional complication. They saw you as a possibility. And possibilities are powerful, my child. They can transform hesitation into longing. They can turn casual interest into a vision of what life might become. They can make someone realize that what frightens them most may also be what they have been praying for. But remain here, because the psychic was about to reveal something connected to your person's past, something they had never shared with you. They said, "You have been comparing this person to someone who hurt you." Your person's entire posture changed. There was an old disappointment they carried. Perhaps a betrayal, abandonment, broken promise, or relationship that taught them to distrust good beginnings. They had believed they had moved beyond it. Yet without realizing it, they had been measuring you against a wound you did not create. Whenever you showed warmth, part of them waited for it to disappear. Whenever they felt close to you, part of them searched for hidden danger. Whenever hope entered, memory warned them not to relax. The psychic said, "You are asking this person to prove they are different while never giving them a fair chance to be known." That truth unsettled them more than anything else. They understood that some of their confusion had never been about you. It had been about the past. You were standing before a door someone else had damaged, and your person had mistaken their fear of opening it for uncertainty about you. The realization changed their feelings because affection was no longer mixed with blame. They began separating who you were from what someone else had done. They began seeing your patience not as a trick, but as character. Your independence not as emotional distance, but as strength. Your caution not as manipulation, but as wisdom. Your depth not as complication, but as something rare. The psychic leaned closer and said, "You may never meet another person with this exact energy." The words were not a threat. They were an invitation to value what was already before them. Your person swallowed hard. They had been behaving as though you were replaceable while privately knowing you were not. That contradiction became impossible to ignore. They asked, "What am I supposed to do?" The psychic answered, "Stop asking strangers what your heart has already told you." Silence followed. For the first time, your person smiled, not because the situation was easy, but because the answer was simple. They did not need another sign. They needed courage. Still, one final question remained, and it was the question they had feared most since entering the room. They pointed to your photograph and asked, "Is there still time?" The psychic looked at the image for a long moment. Then they looked directly into your person's eyes. "There is still a doorway," they said. "But it will not remain open through silence alone." Your person felt those words like a bell ringing through their entire body. They understood that feelings without action could become regret. That admiration without honesty could become distance. That waiting for the perfect moment might cause them to lose the imperfect but precious moment already available. Something in them decided then that they could no longer remain the same. They took your photograph back into their hands, but now they held it differently. Before the meeting, they had carried it like a question. Now they carried it like a responsibility. They stared at your face and silently promised that if they were given another opportunity, they would not hide behind confusion. They would not make you interpret mixed signals. They would not assume you understood feelings they had never expressed. They would speak. But my child, the meeting did not end there. As your person stood to leave, the psychic suddenly asked them to sit down again. There was something else. Something that had not been mentioned. Your person slowly returned to the chair. The room's energy shifted. The psychic placed one hand near your photograph, closed their eyes briefly, and then said, "There is another person connected to this story." Your person's expression tightened. They did not know whether the psychic meant someone from your past, someone currently near you, or someone who had been quietly influencing the connection. The psychic continued, "This person knows more about the bond between you than either of you realize." Your person leaned forward. A name almost came to their mind. Someone who had asked unusual questions. Someone who had watched both of you carefully. Someone who may have noticed the feelings before either of you admitted them. The psychic opened their eyes and said, "What this person has done, or is about to do, will force the truth into the open." Your person's heart began beating faster. They asked, "Who is it?" But the psychic did not give the name. Instead, they looked at your photograph one final time and whispered something that made your person's face lose all composure. They said, "Before you speak to the person in this photo, you need to know what was said about you behind your back." And my child, what your person discovered next was not merely unexpected. It explained the distance. It exposed the hidden influence. And it revealed why someone had been quietly trying to prevent your person from seeing the truth about you.